So how did Alexander meet Bagoas, the eunuch?
Well, when the Persian king Darius was murdered by Bessus in 330 BC, many of his courtiers abandoned Bessus and came in to Alexander to surrender. And one of the most important of them, a chap called Nabazanes, surrendered to Alexander in an area called Hyrcania, just south of the Caspian Sea. And Curtius says he brought with him, as a gift, the eunuch Bagoas. He also says that Bagoas had been the lover of the king Darius and went on to become the lover of Alexander. He adds that Bagoas successfully pleaded with Alexander for Nabazanes to be forgiven, and he was successful because then Nabazanes was allowed to go into retirement. This suggests that Bagoas was a fluent Greek speaker as well as fluent in Persian, and that's exactly the sort of skill you'd expect in a Persian royal eunuch.
Bagoas was depicted as a slave boy in The Persian Boy by Mary Renault. Is that an accurate picture?
Not really. This is the book in question. Many Persian royal eunuchs are known to have occupied very senior positions in the Persian administration. Famously, another eunuch called Bagoas, only a decade or so beforehand, had virtually ruled the Persian Empire in all but name, and there are a number of indications that our Bagoas was quite important as well. In India, he was allowed to sponsor a trireme, one of the boats, on the Indus River voyage, and only the most senior members of Alexander's court did that. Then, near the end of the reign, in November 324 BC, Bagoas entertained Alexander to a meal, to dinner, in his own house, some miles away from the palace at a place called Ecbatana. And then, earlier in that same year, Bagoas personally executed the governor of Persia, a corrupt governor called Oxynes.
Some people have questioned whether Bagoas existed.
Well, one of the main questioners has been W. Tarn, who claimed in this book in particular that Bagoas was an invention of what's called the Vulgate tradition of Alexander historiography. However, it's possible to trace Bagoas back to at least four very early sources who are probably writing independently of one another, and that makes it very unlikely that he's an invention. The other thing to bear in mind is that some people have claimed that there were in fact two Bagoases. There was one who was a Persian prince and another who was the eunuch, and they sort of assign the important roles to the Persian prince and the less significant roles to the eunuch. However, it's quite certain that the person who executed the corrupt governor was the eunuch, so that's not very likely to be a good explanation. And secondly, the person who paid for the trireme on the River Indus, he has an appendage to his name which looks like a corruption of the Greek for the eunuch.
What else do we know about the relationship between Alexander and Bagoas?
We know that Plutarch counted Bagoas as one of the flatterers of Alexander. He gives a short list of Alexander's senior courtiers and friends and includes Bagoas among them, and says these are the people who were responsible for much of the flattery that Alexander experienced. We also know that Bagoas won a dancing contest in a theatre in Carmania, and he said afterwards, when he won the prize, to have walked up through the theatre and gone and sat next to Alexander, and then all the troops in the theatre egged Alexander on to kiss him, which he did in public, and that's a famous incident. I think I've also been able to show that Bagoas acted as Alexander's meter and greeter at court, and that was probably particularly appropriate because as a fluent Greek and Persian speaker, he could speak to all manner of guests from around the empire.
I heard that one historian thinks some Persian eunuchs were actually not castrated.
Yeah, this is a slightly bizarre theory. He thinks that the senior people who are called eunuchs by the ancient Greek writers might not have really been, but only the junior eunuchs were really castrated. He thinks this because he thinks there are simply too many eunuchs in senior positions, but we know for sure that in the Byzantine, the Ottoman and the Chinese imperial courts there were really huge numbers of eunuchs in senior positions as well, so it's not really a very valid objection. The other problem that you have with this theory is that you can imagine the more junior eunuchs were likely to get promoted into some of the more senior eunuch positions. So that would imply, under this theory, a reversal of the operation, and even our medical technology isn't capable of achieving that.
Where can viewers find out more about Bagoas?
Well, they can look at my book, Alexander's Lovers, where there's a whole chapter on Bagoas the eunuch. It's available through internet bookshops, or they can go to my website at www.alexanderslovers.com.
Thank you.